everyone. Nice to be talking at you. I suppose it's a bit weird, but nice to be discussing this with you. I just wanted to share something that I've been thinking about through lockdown, and that's how I use tiers of language, or the breakdown of the tiers of language, how I use that knowledge in trying to support our learners. Now, Loom's limited to only 5 minutes, thankfully, but it just means that I'll just basically pick out the key points of this, and if it triggers anything that's of interest, feel free to get in touch with me, or I'll point you in the direction of a couple of websites that might be of interest. The key thing is, I think this is really important, that in order to comprehend any text, we need to know 95% of its vocabulary. That's what's been stated. And so we need to make sure that we are really aware and conscious of the fact that there will be certain words that our learners aren't aware of. And I think we're really good at that as teachers, but it's not always the words that we think that are inhibiting them gaining the understanding of the text. It can lead to something, this is called the Matthew effect. This is something that Daniel Rigney spoke about. And it's basically saying that if you have good vocabulary and good literacy, it means that you can move quickly from learning to reading to learn. And what you get is you get an increasing literacy gap between those that are the most to the least able. And so what can we do to affect that? Well, who's actually to blame for it? Well, I'll just let you read this. So it's 1 in 12 children have a working vocabulary at age 16, have a working vocabulary of around 800 words. So clearly we can support that, we can do something with that. In order to do that, I think it's important that we are aware of where these tiers, or how language can be grouped. And language was put into a couple of tiers back in the 1980s. They split them up into 3 tiers. So tier 1 is the everyday words that are most likely to be used in conversation: table, ball, door, anything along those lines. So I don't think we need to worry too much. Learners will come to lessons with those, or if not, they'll pick them up very quickly. Tier 2 words are that they're likely to encounter in reading, in academic text. So books, words like maintain, or performed, or benevolent. So they're more complicated words, but they're not the subject-specific words. The subject-specific words, for our perspective, would be tier 3 words. So they would be, for an example of a science one, would be photosynthesis. It is very specific, subject-specific words that we are all very aware of and take our time to teach and break down to our learners. I think that often we are part of, and we'll look at it in a minute, that we are part of this sort of literacy club, that we don't realise sometimes the difficulty, because we've got so much to think about, we don't necessarily realise that there are other words that are stopping our learners accessing the tier 3 words that we would like them to. So just to recap, tier 1 very frequently used in spoken language, tier 2 high frequency in written texts, and tier 3 is the subject-specific words that we've been talking about. So Jeff Barton says that the secret to literacy is making the implicit explicit. And I think that we won't necessarily be aware of that. So what can we do? A really simple way is just to provide synonyms for tier 2 words. I appreciate we've all got so much to do. It doesn't necessarily need to be prepared in advance. It could just be having a chunk of text on the board and looking at what might be the tier 2 words. And this is something that you could do with them and get them to draw out. I think supporting our learners with that is important. And there's a link to the website here, which is a David Vidal website, where he looks at the strategies that you might be able to use. I'm really conscious I've got 15 seconds left, but I hope that just sort of piques our interest and maybe just refreshes. If you've got questions, do get in touch. Thanks very much for listening.